Are you ready to live more authentically and explore who you truly are? Would you love to know how to get there? Hi, I am Jamie Graham Duprey, teacher, author, coach, and host of The Second Half. Throughout the show, we will consider how we can be people who show up honestly, speaking in truth and love, and vulnerably, sharing and reflecting on life experiences. You will be encouraged to make connections in your life that will dare you to explore powerful growth, personally, vocationally, and spiritually. Are you ready to consider how to develop and nurture a growth mindset, take ownership of your life, and create action steps that lead you to being bold, brave, and healthy? The second half starts now. Hello and welcome. I am Jamie Graham Duprey, the host of The Second Half. And today I have my favorite special guest with me, my spouse, Jeremy. Hi, Jeremy.
Hello, Jamie.
It's nice to be here with you in this space again.
It's nice to be with you too.
I was just listening to the nice intro that our wonderful producer put together for us, and it talks about the reason that we have this podcast space is to hopefully explore different ideas and different experiences in life that help us think about how we are continuing to be people who reflect and set intention around trying to grow so that we can be maybe the best possible version of ourselves. So today we chose the topic mental toughness. I'll just start right out and ask, what comes to mind when you hear that phrase, Jeremy, mental toughness?
I think about a I don't know, a grown up and not being terribly, I don't know, tough is the right word.
Yeah, I think we need to talk about the word tough. We didn't really get a chance to prep a ton on this, but
but toughness is not, I mean, I would never use toughness, as a word to describe myself. Maybe mental resiliency is a way I would like to think of myself now, but that was certainly not, any way I thought about myself as a child.
Yeah,
Even in reflection.
So on the theme, thank you for bringing that up right away. I think I even put the word toughness in quotation marks because I have been using my memoirs that I wrote during my times of high school and then transitioning into college and on to adulthood. And there's such a power in reflecting on our formative experiences, thinking about different stories and times that were really impactful for us, for good or for bad growing up, the opportunity to take lessons away from those experiences, different people in our lives that spoke into our lives as far as maybe coaches are really impactful for me in my journey, teachers, other caring adults, and maybe sometimes people that speak into your life that you don't really care to hear that message. And we have to learn how to sift through all of that and figure out what that means for us. So I'm going to talk just a bit about why I chose that phrase, mental toughness, because as a high school basketball player, that was something that was used to help us. I think the focus was to be disciplined. And so the word toughness, like you're saying now, we can really wrestle with that, especially as we're growing into the second half of our life and trying to think about how we show up and how any words land for us. I think that was used for us to really be disciplined and be tough. And if used in the correct context and space, that can be a positive thing. But to your point, sometimes that throws us off a little bit. So for me, I think I thought like, all right, I have to push through. Maybe I rolled my ankle. Maybe I have 4 fouls and I'm getting hijacked by my emotions. I'm really upset, but I gotta draw that mental toughness. So that's kind of where I first thought about this. What else for you are you thinking?
Yeah, I guess think about what that's looked like in development over my life. And I would even say recently, if I ever received any kind of criticism or even feedback that was meant to be, helpful but was hard to hear.
Mm.
sometimes I wouldn't respond that well. And sometimes I don't actually. Um, and so as I reflect back on my life, I wouldn't describe myself as mentally tough. Maybe mentally fragile or
Mm,
emotionally fragile is a word, that might be the opposite of this, but certainly something that I experienced. And so, yeah, I guess as I've grown and just lived life, realized um, I am not going to please every single person in my life, or I'm not going to please the people in my life 100% of the time.
mm,
Like, I just have to realize, like, I'm probably going to disappoint some people. That doesn't mean that I just crawl into a hole and stop living,
mm,
which, sort of speaks to the fragility. But I do think now, I'm hoping that I'm continuing to grow and being a resilient person, able to hear the hard message, experience the unexpected, and not just like withdraw
mm.
or try to escape. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I still don't know if I'd call it tough, but I would call it willing to continue to stay.
And I think earlier when we were just briefly touching on this, you used the word pliable. And then today you thinking of resiliency, you said. And I think there's also a beauty when you talk about being fragile, there's a vulnerability when we even admit that hey, sometimes something hits me and I feel fragile.
Mhm. Yeah. And then I guess there's a nuance there too between fragility and vulnerability.
Mm,
I actually think opening ourselves up, being honest, being genuine, being real, with whatever we're feeling and how we're feeling, like exposing ourselves, making ourselves vulnerable, there's actually quite a bit of strength.
mm.
Or yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of strength there that we should encourage that, but the fragility, I don't, I want to stay away from fragility if I can.
Okay. Is there instead of fragility, I would like to show up.
Yeah, vulnerability,
Yeah. Okay.
honestly,
Yep.
genuinely, and then also just showing up and continue to be willing to show up. One of the people in our lives, the bishop of our church, she really emphasizes that all the time, even when things are difficult, even into the hard or the mess. Like she wants to show up, and I love that example. I think we could do that as well. Just keep showing up for people, and let that be a part of our resiliency.
Mhm. Amen. Maybe I think Bishop might say, but that's a Brene Brown thing too. I can't remember. I'll have
Okay.
to check on
Yeah,
that.
we'll
But
give credit to
yeah,
whoever we can.
I appreciate that. And right now, we are actually pre-recording this show because of some conflicts for our normal live recording time. And so this is the day after the presidential election in the United States. So it's an interesting day. Both Jeremy and I are in ministry and take those calls very seriously and really see our role in this time to minister and to love people, yes, in our congregation and other ministry setting, but in the community as well. So I think when we consider, quote, mental toughness right now, for me, maybe the vulnerability that you're bringing up really lands. And when I consider being a person who wants to be what I call a second half life liver, um, that means that I'm more willing to delve into things that are very uncomfortable or make me feel uncomfortable.
Mhm.
Yes, we're all fragile. I think we have to name that. We have a fragility. We have emotions. God made us that way, which is wonderful. And those emotions often hijack us. And the older I get and explore deeper spirituality and things that we talk about in second half living, more intentionality includes figuring out how I want to show up in spaces where there's divisiveness, where there's all kinds of emotions, where it feels like there's one side's going to win or lose. And then it just causes a lot of unknown and negativity and hate. And that's just been something I would say, even in 7 years ago, where I would probably have just gone into victim mode. That was something I noticed even in some stories when I was reflecting in basketball games. If we were losing or something wasn't going well at halftime, I would start this narrative in my head of like, if only they knew how much I was going through. Uh, and I've learned since then that that's a victim mentality. So when we're talking about mentality, maybe that's just the word we use. I don't want to go there. How does that, what does that stir up for you?
Yeah, that's good. I appreciate you sharing that. Appreciate your vulnerability in that. I think you're not alone. I mean, I'm there with you too. There's, so many of us just instantly and easily and maybe even addictively enter into that like, woe is me. This is somebody else's fault. I have no control over this. This is not the way I wanted it to be. And because it's not the way I want it to be, I'm going to be passive aggressive or even aggressive to get what I want, and not sort of have that resiliency to like just recognize reality and then, really take one step forward into what it looks like to live our best selves into that reality. Like we cannot, I mean, I do this all the time. I even this morning, found myself saying, well, what am I going to do to make someone else feel bad about a decision that I didn't like? Like, that's not healthy thinking. It's not healthy for me. It's not healthy for anybody else.
Yeah.
It continues that cycle of divisiveness. It continues that. So I think it's important for us to name it, that it's there, that oftentimes we do feel that way, and then start to, well, either turn to a higher power to help transform us or start to just like name it.
Yeah.
And then when we name it, begin to do that difficult training of thinking in a healthier way, a more resilient way of like, oh, I'm just not gonna pout here.
Yeah, so let's rename this show today. Instead of mental toughness, we have a resilient mentality. How about that?
I love it. We'll have to change your show notes.
So that's great. I love that. One thing that I love about being in spaces like this, where we identify, something that we're trying to work on, the best way for us to truly learn and grow from that is if we just delve in and we're honest, and then we talk through why something strikes us a certain way, and then what we want to do about it, if we want to do something about it. So thanks for bringing all that up. One thing that that Jeremy and I enjoy and have learned as being partners now for 20 plus years is hopefully the iron sharpens iron, and that means you got to get into the fire. So it's not always going to be pleasant. I know if there's any Enneagram followers out there, Jeremy is an Enneagram 9. He would like to keep the peace.
What's up, 9s?
I'm an Enneagram 2. I would like to help everybody in any way so that they can all feel better. We can all be on the same page, even if it's to my detriment sometimes or my energy. So we're learning a lot about that. So when we come back in the second half today, well, let's start there. We'll think about what a resilient mentality looks like, maybe share a story or two, and then offer some questions and some encouragement for others to think about what that means in their lives as well. So we will be back in just about 2.5 minutes for the second half of the second half. Hello, welcome back to the second half of our podcast here on Transformation Talk Radio. I'm Jamie Graham Duprey here with my husband, Jeremy Duprey. And we started this episode exploring what we said as mental toughness. And as we've talked through, we've realized that a resilient mentality is more appealing to us. So we're gonna go with that. So a story we thought of is I wrote my memoirs about growing up playing sports, specifically basketball. That was my passion. My friends and I all played together. We had impactful coaches. In fact, my last episode, I got to speak with Coach Van Dyke, my high school coach, and explore lessons learned, which is so fun, which one of the huge things and reasons we engage in sports and activities and groups is for the relationship piece. Hopefully that's the main reason, whether we realize it or not. But a story that came to mind for me was thinking about free throws in a basketball game. Those of you who might not be familiar with the sport, a free throw happens if your team has the ball and a person on the other team either hits your arm or knocks you over or something happens and a foul is called. And then everybody stops, the game stops, the time stops. And then you, who were fouled, get to go to the free throw line and have the ball, take your time, and you get to shoot a shot with nobody guarding you. It's free. And it's a lot of pressure. It's a fun part of the game. So I'm going to have Jeremy share about an experience that we went through just last weekend, just Saturday, with our youngest son, our 11-year-old, in a free throw contest, a hoop shoot. So can you kind of set the stage and share how that experience was, Jeremy?
Sure. Well, yeah, the Elks Organization of Service Club puts on this nationwide, competition where young people come and they shoot free throws, and that's it. But it's a little different than a game. They show up and they've got some competitors and they get to warm up shooting free throws. And then when they start, they get to shoot 25 free throws each. And the crowd that is gathered, which is sometimes small, sometimes large.
Quite big, yeah.
Can be big. The crowd has to be absolutely silent. And so it's like one of the more bizarre experiences that you can have in any kind of competition because there's just no other sort of background noise. It's like all of the focus is on these students who are shooting. And, and they're shooting one at a time. And they're shooting, 10 or 15 at a time. And everybody's eyes are just locked on this one kid. You're just out on an island kind of by yourself. And so these kids are starting to shoot and, they may have practiced and done well in practice, but it's just a different game getting in front of all those people and it's just so quiet. And then you miss one. And sometimes it could kind of snowball a little bit because of the pressure, because it is a difficult place to be. I'm reminded of this. I think this was Theodore Roosevelt, that this idea that the people who are in the arena are the ones who are opening themselves up to criticism or judgment, and they're the ones playing the game, and so they're active. And I think his quote was, "Hey, get in the game, like." Be willing to go into that hard spot. And we're proud of our kids. They've all tried to do this. You did this as a kid.
Yeah. Oh, I love that visual of getting in the game. And when you're the bystander, the audience, whatever, it's easy to judge. You're just judging constantly. And everybody does it to some extent. Hopefully with these kids, it's pretty light, but you want your kid to win. And Jackson was reflecting on it to our 11-year-old, and he said, "Mom, I just looked down on my knees when I was sitting there when another kid was shooting, and they were just shaking. There's so much nervousness there, but it's in a contained, safe space. It's an opportunity for them to think about resiliency mentally, having a resilient mentality. The term that the Elks Club uses is grit. That's their key word, and helping kids learn about grit and grow in it and get better at it, being in uncomfortable situations. So that free throw analogy is a great example. My last game as a senior in high school, I ended up shooting 19 free throws in this game. It was crazy.
That's a lot.
Crazy. For one person. I did, not just our team.
Yeah.
That's like a lot for a team to shoot.
It is.
And I was the best free throw shooter on the team, like my percentage was, and I only made 9 that day.
So you were under 50%.
It's like, what is going on? And all the things, the the environment, what was riding on this championship game, the nerves, whatever. I will say I still blame it on the fact that I had broken my finger in that game. But anyway.
Excuses.
Yeah. And what I want to jump to from that like first half of life for me, that formative experience as a kid, I was playing a game. We play these games. We encourage our kids, our students to do that, to be involved in something where there is that nervousness, where there's that space, would you say, in the arena where you have to learn about how you yourself react to different things. And we're missing the mark as adults, or as after we finish those things up and go into adulthood, adult age. Unfortunately, that doesn't always mean, and age doesn't always mean wisdom. But hopefully, what we're talking about here is you learn something from it. You reflect on it. You go from this winning, losing space, which is so tangible and concrete for a teenager. When you're playing a game, it's fun to get wrapped up in that and be the winners. You don't want to be the losers, whatever. Very binary language there. But the hope is, and this is what I'm learning, not only reflecting on my time as a player, but being a coach as I have grown up, and then also now having my own kids or student athletes in these situations. We want to help make the connection to the bigger picture. Okay. What's the metaphor for life here? This isn't binary, right, wrong, win, lose, good, bad. That's not the way the world actually works. Although our lazy lizard brains, unfortunately, try to make things work that way. So what else are we learning from these things and experiences?
Sure.
Jeremy?
Well, I just love that, that word grit. I think, resilient mentality, like really just falls into that same sort of category. Like if you can learn to just sustain and continue, even in the midst of what other people or even yourself might call a failure. I know one of our kids, our kids have gone into these competitions and they have not, quote unquote, won. I mean, they have not come in first place, but have they learned something? For sure. And they walk away from it with more skills and more resiliency, which I am just super thankful for. I almost appreciate them not winning as much as I do them winning. Because they're going to learn maybe more from the times when they didn't win. And one of the authors that we love to read is Richard Rohr. You've mentioned him numerous times. You're reading a book by him right now called Falling Upward.
Yep.
And that is the idea of that book. Is that when we get into the second half of living, it is our failures, it's our falling that actually progress us forward in life to that second half living. So we have to start looking at the times in which we fail, or the times in which we are vulnerable, the times in which we need help, the times in which we fell down, and those are the moments in which we learn. And I look back on my life as an adult, and I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, the times where I really messed up are usually the times where I grew the most.
Absolutely.
And I love that. I love that accepting that, appreciating it, seeing it as a gift is a different way of looking at it.
Yep, absolutely. And that growth mindset too, if we're kind of thinking about mentality, there's that kind of goes with it too. What kind of mindset do you have? Are you a person who has a fixed mindset and your arms are crossed and it's got to be A or B, it's got to be win or lose or not, or are you a person who has a growth mindset, who's willing to explore a new idea, a new awareness? Hopefully we're on that side, or at least willing to engage in what that would look like, even though it's so uncomfortable. And this could be a topic of its own. Really messes with our ego. And if we are all honest, that's driving so much of our actions and our emotions. And as our time winds down here, I just am really struck by that word resiliency, growth mindset, being able to look at a situation or an experience and consider how what we need, maybe the grit that we need, how we're going to work through it, how we want to be, how we want to show up in spaces. At the first half of this episode, we talked about getting emotionally hijacked. So think about those times. When have been times in your life where you have been emotionally hijacked? Maybe an easier way to say that is offended. When have you been offended? What comes to mind? Or why? Maybe start noticing patterns. Well, I get offended every time somebody says this to me, or this interaction occurs, or I see this on TV. Well, challenge yourself to think about why. Or I go into victim mode. Oh, I feel woe is me. I feel so sorry for myself. Why? Is it real, or is that just your perception and the cycle that you've been allowing yourself to live in for who knows, years or whatever, depending on your stage in life. And then just thinking about maybe what models of resiliency do you have in your life, and how do you want to consider that going forward? What else, Jer, for encouragement for each other we
Sure.
can keep working through in our lives, and also for our listeners?
Yeah, well, I love the idea of just taking a pause, especially if you can notice in yourself that you are sort of hijacked by your own emotion, or you are offended. A great question for yourself. Just pause. Why? What's going on here? What's this speaking to about my identity, or my my desire to protect myself? And maybe just even asking that question starts to get you thinking a little bit differently. And then you can lean into your resilient mentality that's there.
It is there. And God opens when we're willing to enter into those spaces, and they're uncomfortable.
Oh, totally.
I feel like most of us, if we could admit, really, we don't want to. But if you want to think about being a second half life liver and someone who enters into new spaces, which means new self-awareness, you got to be okay with being uncomfortable, and then find somebody to talk to about it, a safe space where you can explore that, and give yourself and each other a lot of grace. Yeah. So thanks so much for showing up today. We talked about the value of that. Let's just keep showing up for each other, and consider about who we are, how we want to be. And if not, let's challenge ourselves to do better when the opportunity presents itself. Thanks so much, Jeremy.
Welcome.
I'm here on Transformation Talk Radio the second and fourth Wednesday of the month at 9 a.m. Mountain. Otherwise, you can find us wherever podcasts are streamed. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and thanks for showing up. Thank you for listening to The Second Half with me, Coach Duprey. Tune in on the second and fourth Wednesday of every month at 8 a.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio, where you will be encouraged to make connections in your life that will dare you to explore powerful growth personally, vocationally, and spiritually. For more information about me, my courses, my coaching, and my books, and how I can support you on your journey, find me on my website, coachdupre.com. See you next time.